Hi, I'm Scott at ediblemusic.com. 1176 compressors are a very popular, very versatile compressor to use, but they have a few peculiarities as well. So I'm going to show you how to make use of an 1176, but then I'll also show you some of the intricacies so that you can get the most out of it. The first thing to know is that these compressors have what's called a fixed threshold. So if you've been using other compressors where you would drop down the threshold in order to begin applying compression, well, these compressors have a fixed threshold. So it's up to you to set the input gain in order to meet that threshold level and begin to apply compression on the 1176. So you would do that with the input knob, and then on the output knob you would bring the gain down or up depending upon how much compression or what kind of compression you're applying in order to get it back to the same level as you had going in. So get a good balance first of all, using the faders, using gain, and then you would apply the compression and then rebalance the gain coming out of it. And the next thing you'll notice is that the attack and release times are not displayed in millisecond values. You might be familiar on other compressors where when you turn the knob to all the way to the left, then that means that the compressor is working faster, whereas to the right, the compressor is working slower. But in this case, think of it like a speedometer where you're driving a vehicle, and when you floor it, the speedometer goes up when you're going faster and it goes down when you're going slower. So if you were to turn the attack or release knobs to the right, that is speeding up the attack or release times, and to the left it's slowing them down. And it also has preset ratio values from 4, 8, 12, and 20, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a bit because there's some cool intricacies. I want to show you some of those intricacies about the attack and release times and the ratio using some sound examples here. And I'm going to use this arpeggiated synth here. You can tell that it sounds like a synthesizer, but it also functions similar to a picked guitar, how a picked guitar would, or an instrument that has that kind of rhythmic component to it. So I'll start engaging the compression here. And I'll start showing you what happens when I begin to adjust the attack times. And this is the very cool thing about 1176 compressors, is that what informs their versatility is the fact that they can range from having a very slow attack time so that you can emphasize those peaks, those transient elements of a program element, or it can go very fast so that you can actually tamp down on those peaks and smooth out the level of the signal. So here's a very slow attack, and as I move it up, you'll notice that the compressor begins to move up tighter against that initial peak of the arpeggiated synth here. So now you can hear that, or you can feel it too. And as I move it more quickly, it'll begin to put the attack time in a fast enough position that it begins to press down on those beginning parts. You can hear right around there. When I turn it off, you'll feel them start coming out again. And there it is all the way up. Cool. So so far that's the order that you would probably want to apply an 1176 compressor. Getting the gain okay so that it's meeting the threshold of the compressor, and then setting the attack and release times. The ratio is a really cool part of this plugin, and I think that it's something that a lot of folks don't really realize or don't take advantage of, at least. When you adjust the ratio, again, on other plugins you might notice a very significant difference between different ratio settings. What happens when you use an 1176 and you adjust the ratio is that it actually also adjusts the attack time. So it slows the attack time up just a little bit as you increase the ratio. And in doing that, it helps to prevent from an unattractive kind of pumping effect that can happen. So I'm going to adjust the ratio here, and you'll notice that it still sounds good throughout. That's why when using an 1176, I usually will recommend to have a look at the ratio last. So do the input, do the attack and release, and then just have a check with the ratios to see whether they influence the sound in ways that you like it or not. Yeah, that sounds nice. I'm using the Universal Audio version here. There are so many 1176 emulations out there. Your workstation might even come by default with a version of it. I know that Pro Tools has the BF76. There's a Waves version, Arturia, IK Multimedia. All of them function the same way. The distinctions between them are in how they're emulated. And you might have also noticed, if you've ever been browsing around, that there are different 1176 versions that look different as well. Some of them will have a silver faceplate on them, some of them will have a blue stripe. And that's when you can get into comparing different versions. They all function the same in terms of the input and output, the attack and release, and the ratios. However, because different models of 1176s over the years have been made using different materials and different internal components, then they'll have slightly different sonic characteristics, and they'll all work really great for you. Don't worry about which one is the best versus which one is the worst, because they're all very good. But when you're getting into the particularities between different emulations, then you can get into comparing some things more easily. And so the Universal Audio one is cool because you can turn the compression off and just use it as a saturation box. That sounds cool, but you would get a lot of versatility, again, out of an 1176 because of the very awesome attack and release characteristics that it has. When you are using one, I recommend to experiment a little bit with slower attack times and faster attack times. Again, when you are wanting to emphasize the rhythmic qualities of a program element or an instrument that you have running through it, then you can adjust the attack time so that they're slow enough to let the peaks come through, or you can move the attack time fast enough so that it will actually push down on those peaks. And the result of that is that it will move the instrument a little bit backwards in the mix balance, so that if you have other program elements that you want to be highlighting, you can use a faster attack time and it will kind of tuck things in behind it so that they won't poke out and be too disruptive to the mix balance. That's an 1176. I highly recommend that you get one. Again, pick whichever one you want, whichever one's your fave, but try it out and have fun.